Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay, all right. Well, good afternoon. Well, good evening, Mom. So I'm so glad that you were able to join tonight on Microsoft Teams. And so, what I have been doing, and the reason that I wanted to select you, of course, you know that I'm in the program at the University of West Georgia for the doctorate in school improvement. And so, one of the things that we have been reading is a book called Adaptive Leadership. It's the practice of adaptive leadership. And so, we are in chapter 14. Chapter 14 has been talking about your loyalties. It's talking about the loyalties you have for your community, your colleagues, and your ancestors. Oftentimes, people may not understand that they're doing things because of the loyalties they have for their families, the loyalties they have for friends. And often our loyalties pull us in different directions. And so I wanted to share that as we started with our conversation tonight. And so this assignment is requiring me to speak with my mom, my grandmother. It says either someone from a religious group, and it wants me to identify the factions that influence my actions. And so oftentimes before a person does something, we may think about what our mom told us, we may think about what our dad told us, and so those are the things that we are going to talk about tonight. And so that's our introduction. The authors of the book have been encouraging us as leaders to move beyond what we say we value and really examine our behaviors, because oftentimes our behaviors reveal what we truly value. And I like this story. There was a short story in the book. It talked about a man. It says one of the best ways to diagnose how you have prioritized your loyalties is to rely less on what you say to yourself and others about your loyalties, and to begin watching what you do. And so here's the story of Marty. It says when Marty was a young, ambitious state legislator in Massachusetts, he would routinely rush home from the state office, bring his two children over to the couch in the living room, read them a book, and then rush out the door to an evening filled with meetings. He told himself all the way to the meetings what a great family man he was. The kids, of course, experienced it all very differently, as did his wife, who had spent the whole day without communicating with anyone above the age 4. Marty was very focused. He never passed up a meeting. But Marty did not know that even though he came home every day and he read a book to his kids, he came home and he made sure they ate and rushed out the door, he was not spending that quality time with them. And so, as I thought about the conversation today, I know you and I have a very close relationship. We just came back from Savannah. We oftentimes do girls' trips. I have close relationships with my dad and just the family as a whole. So, I wanted to give a moment for you to share about your life, your influences, your family, and your stories will help me understand the deep roots of responsibility, identity, and just the values that I have created for myself. And this will help me become a better leader as I reflect. So, as I get started, I would want to give an opportunity for you to just share about who you are. So, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Betty Williams. I was born in Baker County, and about 38 years ago, my husband moved to Macon, Georgia, and so that me and my children we moved with him, and we've been here ever since.
Okay. So what high school did you graduate from in Baker County?
I graduated from East Baker High School in 1973. Afterward, I went to the nursing program. After that, I worked in Cal Memorial Hospital for 9.5 years before moving to Macon, Georgia. After moving to Macon, I started doing some substitute teaching. From substitute teaching, I went back to school and got a social degree in early childhood and development. And for that, I worked for 28 years with children and make a big EOC Head Start.
Okay, okay. So 28 years at Head Start. So you love the children.
The children was very interesting. At the beginning, I started working with 3 and 4 year old, and it just was a great value to see how they change each and every day. Some came in that they wasn't able to talk, but after they got in, they began to learn how to say different words, and they began how to learn how to do things for themselves. And so it just was a great experience just to see how they grow and how they change each day.
Okay. And you mentioned that you were born in Baker County, Georgia. Can you share a little about just your upbringing, just your household, your family of origin, maybe Grandma Bob, and just the family situation?
Well, in Baker County, my grandmother, she was the head of the household, and my mom and my aunts, they were the ones that went out to work. And with that being said, I was told that it was 19 people in the household with the children and the adults. My brothers, they were there at first, and so they was working and helping bringing money in order to help take care of the children. They did farm work. We was too little to do anything. But as time passed on, my brothers and all they moved away. And so that my mama and aunts, they were the main source of the house. Later on, my mom, she moved away, moved out with my grandmother and started on her own as a maid. So she worked as a maid every day. And she went from a maid to working at a chicken factory. As she working at the chicken factory, that was a great source of living for us. Things got a little better for us and all. And so she worked until she reached that age where she had to retire from the chicken as kegels.
So, one of the things that I heard you say was that you chose initially you worked as you did nursing school, and then you worked at the hospital for 9.5 years, and then you started substitute teaching. Both of those are caring professions. When you consider your career, what you would do for life, what influenced you to choose nursing and teaching?
When I was in high school, I always wanted to do something that to help people's. And I liked the older people a lot. And I always wanted to be able to help them. If they couldn't help themselves, I wanted to get the degree in nursing or some kind of care in order to help older peoples. That was my dream to help them. So as I was working in the hospital, I enjoyed working with the one that couldn't feed themselves, couldn't get themselves a bath. It was just a joy to be able to go in and do and make them feel comfortable. I even talk with them, go in and sit down and talk with them. And they tell me to turn the TV. I turn the TV for a little while with them and just did whatever I could to make them comfortable and feel welcome as they were being sick and in the hospital. When I moved to Macon, I wanted to go to work in in a hospital, but my husband said that by we changing from one time to another one, we didn't know anybody here to keep my children. Of course, they were small. And so he told me to try to find something different. So I signed up my daughter for school. And after I signed her up for school, I started doing substitute teaching at the school where she was going. And from that, I got a job at a daycare, working during the daytime because my husband said I didn't need no night job because I had to take care of the children. And from there, I got a job with Making Beauty EOC Head Start. And then I started the school. And working with the children was just a different experience from working with older people. The children needed me as well as the older people, but the children was a head start. You had to bring them up. We were teaching them and showing them which way to go, how to go, and what to do, from wiping the nose until eating with a spoon or fork until opening up their milk. It was something new and totally different from working in the hospital. But each one of them was a great job because it was a learning experience for me as well as the children and the patients.
Okay. And I think with you working at Head Start, that's when you went back to school. And so I remember when I went to Georgia Southern, you started back to school at Central Georgia Tech. And so we were both in college at the same time. And so one of the key accomplishments, I do remember your nursing penning ceremony, where you were pinned. You were such a little small person in your white uniform, pinned for nursing. And I remember you graduating from Central Georgia Tech as well. So, how were your experiences going back into Central Georgia Tech? I remember the day we took you out to Central Georgia Tech, and your mom, Grandma Bob, just happened to be with us that day when you went out to Central Georgia Tech to do the AccuPlace or your placement test. And so, how was it going back to college just after being out of college for so long?
Going back to college was something big. You had to think about, am I making the right decision on going back? And I wanted it. So my mom, she went in with me to take the test, and it was just like she was taking the test. So that made me more motivated. It motivated me more that I can do. Just look at her sitting over on the other side of me, waiting on me. That made me more motivated that I can do it. I will do it, and I'm going to do it. So that's what I did. Plus, my daughter got ready to go to college, and she was saying, "Mama, we can go to college together, and we could graduate together." So that's what I stuck to. That we both was in college at the same time, and we can do it.
We can do it, and we did it. And it's funny that you bring up Grandma Bob. We're talking about loyalties. I think about when I was studying for my counseling exam. It was called the Praxis for Counseling. And she was with us in Macon at the time, and she sat right at the table with me. She listened to the questions, and she said, "No, that doesn't sound right. That does not sound like something that a counselor would say." And so she supported me all the way. Although she had struggles, she did not finish school. She could not read or write. She could write some things, but she supported me fully as I studied for my counseling certification. And so this brings us to when we talk about our loyalties. Question number one, I want to focus on your work and your professional relationships. And so I know you had wonderful, rich relationships with your colleagues. I think the best and most exciting day of your work experience for me was your retirement celebration. Just seeing you had the biggest drive-through retirement celebration that I have seen, and I'm thankful to each and every person who wish you well after your 28 years. But can you tell me about some of the people that you work closely with throughout your life, like supervisors or co-workers or people who worked under you? Maybe if you were the teacher in the classroom, maybe they were your assistant, your supervisors, or your co-workers. Can you tell me something about them?
Now, when I started at Head Start, I had a great co-worker. Her name was Brenda Jones, with Brenda Finney when I started, and she came in and she said, "Hey," and she began to show me and tell me different things about the job, from how to do a time sheet where we had to fill out our time sheet in order to get paid. And we also had to ride the bus. And she told me all about riding the bus and what we had to do and what we didn't have to do. She shared so much stuff about how you write the lesson plan, what to do and what not to do. We became to be the best of friends because she was the one that always encouraged me about different things. And I encouraged her, and she told me the different things, what to watch out for and what not to watch out for, what to do and what not to do. So my brother just coming in and picking me up because I was new and it's showing me what to do and what not to do. It was just the best. Those were the best years. Later on, my friend got sick, and she left me. And so that was a big, big thing for me. But I will never forget all the things that she did for me as I began my journey as a teacher.
And we just give respect, and we give just our sympathy because we remember all of the people who passed away as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, you and Miss Brenda were on the front lines. Your school closed, but then it opened back up, and although the two of you were up in age, I think you were in your 60s at the time. Miss Brenda was in her 60s. The two, and they told you not to go with health conditions. I know that the two of you still went back to work because of your dedication, and so I just give just respect to everyone who passed away during the pandemic. So you said that Miss Brenda told you things that to look out for. What were some of the things that were kind of hot spots that you had to look out for kind of on the job?
One thing about it, she was telling me about the environment, teamwork, and she was telling me to be aware of different things that are going on in the school and not to fall into different traps. Although it was a program where you working and taking care of children, it was still some things different that you had to be aware of and the do's and the don't do. And the main thing is teamwork. And she told me about our teamwork, how we work together and stick together with one another. And I thought that was great. She shared things about the books and what to do for the children and what not to do, how to be involved with the parents and talking with the parents. And we had to do something called home visit. So she told me how you go in and introduce yourself to the parents. Although we had training, but just that one-on-one training with her was totally different. Just to listen, and she said, "Come on, I'm gonna show you how to do this." And she showed me what to do and what not to do, and that was just a great experience.
So Miss Brenda was just essential to your professional development, coming into your transition from the hospital environment, certainly from working in the daycare environment to more of a federal program as Head Start has been a federal program. Can you mention about your supervisors? What were the roles of your supervisors in supporting you as a Head Start teacher?
My supervisor was the one that come in and observe us after the things that my friend, well, my colleague had showed me what to do and how to do. The supervisor come in, and I was able to experience that as they come in. I knew what to do, what to say, and how to do it, and all like that, and how taking care of the children. They comes in, observe you. They were watching you how you interact with the children. What did you do with the children, and how you spoke with the children, and on and on. We had where the children had to serve themselves. So they observed you to make sure that you wasn't the one that's serving the children, but the children was serving themselves. So we had to work with the children. So they observed that because we had to make sure that if the child couldn't do it themselves, we'll take the child hand on the spoon and we'll help them hold it and they pick up the food and put it in their place. And they was so happy to do things like that. But our supervisor always come in and observe us to see what was what. And then if something they saw something, they will always have a meeting with us one on one and let us know what to do on the next go round.
Okay. Okay. So looking back, was there someone at work that you felt most responsible to or connected to, or why? And I think you've already shared that about Miss Brenda. Was there anyone that you mentored in the same way that Miss Brenda mentored you? Was there someone that you were able to turn around and support a new person coming onto the job?
Years ago, as I became to be a teacher, and from a teacher to a caregiver, I will when my new caregivers come in, I would share with them about what to do, what we not to do, and about team player. We're working as a team with one another. That was
Mm-hmm.
the main thing. We work together and
Mm-hmm.
what we did, and introducing them to the lesson plan, introducing them to all the paperwork, what we had to do, and I just did it all with them coming in, knowing what to put on the board and what not to put on the board, and so fun on like that.
Okay. So now let's talk about family, friends, and community. So we are, as a person, you were an employee at work. You were friends with individuals at work. But now let's go more to the community aspect as relates to church. I know church has played a very huge role in your life from being a small girl. You told me stories about my Uncle Henry toting you to church because you were the baby amongst your sisters and brothers. You told me stories about coming up, going to union meetings in Georgia, Alabama, reading letters. So, church was a very important part of your life. And since we have been in Macon, I know that we have always been connected to churches here. And so, the first question here is, what were the most important communities or groups that you were a part of, such as your family, church, neighborhood, or social clubs? When you think about those groups and think about what you do now, what are those groups that are most important to you?
Well, my family was very important to me because it was my mom, my cousin, and me. It was just the three of us at first. And my mom depended on me so much because I was the one that was left behind. So although my cousin was there, but she depended on me because like she couldn't read and write. But she
Mm-hmm.
showed me how to do a money order. She showed me how to write, but she couldn't write. She showed me how to mail it off at the post office and so for that. She showed me how to sit down and write a letter to wherever she wanted to go. And so I usually sit down and do all of that for her because I was the one that responsible for her and make sure that her bills got paid and on like that. From going to the bank with her to going to the grocery store, buying the grocery and handing her finance and everything like that. My church was just excited. Being in a small environment and a smaller church, I was like a leader in the church. My mom taught me how to sing hymns and how to sing songs and all. So by me being in a small church, it wasn't anything to just sing a song or do something like that and give God all the praise. And I also was the one that our Deacon Thomas, Deacon Thomas MacArthur, he thought that I was the one that to go out with him wherever he went, all over the community. I was the one from going to Alabama to every which way. And they really thought that I was his daughter until he told them better that that was his church member daughter. And I was the chosen one that he chose to go different places with him and do and work in the church.
So how did you feel? It seems like you had a lot of leadership responsibilities as a child growing up, because you mentioned, and that's similar to I see children whose parents don't speak English. And when they come to meetings, they're responsible for their parent. They're coming to the meeting to learn about programs to sign up, but their parent is there, and their parent doesn't have that interpreter there. And so they are very much responsible for their parents. One thing that I noted as I was reflecting on talking with you, I reflected upon the loyalties. You would always say that, and I witnessed it, and you always shared before you got married how well you took care of grandma. You said that, oftentimes when she was working, you would cook, you would iron her clothes, you would get her ready for work in the morning, you would pack her lunch and just make sure the house was clean and everything was okay for her. Can you talk more about why you felt it was your responsibility to do those things and support your mother in that way?
Well, I was working as well, but my mom, after she started working to Kegels and working so late at night, I felt obligated to just take over and do things in the house, from making sure that the bills were paid until making sure that we had grocery in the house, everything was clean and kept taking care of her. For some reason, I just felt obligated to take care of her and take the role on that she's supposed to be doing, but I took it on to help her and make sure that she was okay and that she was being taken care of. Although I had a job as well, working at night, but when she came home from her job, she had food to eat, the house was clean, and everything it was done. It was nothing for her to do but just to take a bath and really go to bed.
Mm-hmm. Because she was working hard. I know Kegels was just one of the hardest places to work at. I oftentimes remember grandmama talking about how they would cut the chicken and how the water just running on you and just being wet. And that environment was not just the best of environments, but I know they have made improvements over time. So, when you reflect on this, what values or expectations were strong in these communities? So, when you talk about your family and the church, what values, what did they expect of you? And did they ever come into conflict with each other?
Well, like I said, my mom and my aunts and all, they expected for me, if was anything to be done, they felt like that I was the one and I knew what to do. So by they feeling that way toward me, I always be the one that step up and try to do it. And with all us being in the house together, we didn't have no conflicts because as one graduated, they always moved. And so it was just me and my cousin, Helen, we were left, and she was very quiet, and I was quiet. So we didn't ever have no conflict between one another. And after my mom moved out with my cousins, and my other cousin moved in with us, Jesse, we were just like sisters and brothers, and we didn't have no conflicts with one another. Although Jesse would tell on you if things that wasn't going right, we'll make sure that Aunt Bob knew about it. So
Hmm.
things went well as a child.
Hmm. And as a young adult. Can you remember a time when you felt pulled in different directions by family or community expectations, and how did you decide what to do? I know you talked about earlier when you got married and you had children, you were studying for exams, and you felt always, even you were saying when you would get off work, you felt compelled to cook, make sure we had dinner. And then you would do lesson plans. Did you ever feel just conflicted by the things you had to do at work, home, having dad's uniforms clean? Did you ever feel conflicted by all of those things?
I didn't feel any conflict. Although I may have got tired sometimes, but By God's grace and mercy, He strengthened me to keep on going and keep on doing what I was doing. So by me doing all that for my family, I didn't feel no kind of conflict. I didn't get angry about doing anything. I just did and went on.
So when you reflect now, who in your life did you feel the greatest sense of responsibility or duty toward? And what made the connection so strong? And this could be a person who's in the present or past, but when you reflect on your life, who did you feel the greatest sense of responsibility or duty toward?
My mom, she had a strong mind out of this world. My mom told me how to save, what to do, and what not to do. My mom told me that if you had a dime, baby, try to save a nickel of it. And I'm saying a dime. And she told me, she said, if you had 5 cents, try to save 2 pennies. She said, because as you save those nickels and dimes, eventually it would equal to $1. So she told me what to do, how to save, and not to spend everything you had at one time. And she told me not to depend on anybody else, depend on yourself, and to be a leader. So by that being said, always dependent on self and not anyone else.
And that is powerful. When I think of my grandmother and her strength, she actually built a home from the ground, uh, on her own land, as a black mother with children during the 1970s, early 80s. Also, as an extension of that, as I've gotten older, I realized that in addition to building a home, she actually built a church. And so I can remember as a little girl her meeting with the builders, and she was overseeing the building of the church. And that's something that typically women don't do. Even to this day, you don't normally see women who are over a construction project. And so she was very essential, in the building up of the church. And she was the holder and the keeper of the church's money, the church's finances. And so, on Sundays after church, the money came home with her. And you would have thought she had a vault, but it was a file cabinet. And she would put the money away and take it to the bank. And so she was that person who was very responsible for the physical building of the church and just for the upkeep of that. Do you want to share something about just her role in the community? I can remember people reaching out to your mom for support, such as spiritual support, and things of that nature.
My mom, she was a strong young lady. And she was a strong lady that believed that I can do, I will do, I'm going to do it. Although she had some trials and tribulation come up, but she fought it and kept going and kept moving. And like you said, she was the one that they nominated to be the treasurer of the church. And after my mom got to be the treasurer of the church,
Mm-hmm.
that's when they began to see the money coming in because on Sunday she collected the money. On Monday, she had to go to the bank. Or either I went to the bank because she trusted me with the money and she didn't take no chance and she billed and put that money in the bank until it billed and came up enough for we to have enough money to buy the land, purchase the land, and from the land they began to search and try to find somebody to build the church for us. She was a strong young lady, and a lot of people depended on her. Although she didn't have no education, but they depended on her with what a decision that she made. And from that, as the church went up.
Mm-hmm. And when you say she didn't have an education, I just strongly reflect on that she could have possibly learned how to read. But what was the story of her schooling? Because I know she often said that her teacher said she had yellow fever.
She got sick when she was a child, and I think she said she had the pneumonia or something like that. But from that, it took effect on her learning, she said. And she didn't, the thing that she did know, she forgot. And as she grew up, she began to learn how to play an organ. And she said she was a good organ player. But as life passed on, she forgot. She
Mm-hmm.
forgot that gift that God gave her. But she said the reason she couldn't read and write, she could write a little bit, sign her name, but just to sit down and write a letter or something like that, she couldn't do that. But again, she was a strong person that did in the church, sung in the church, went to different meetings and all, and a part of different organization in the church.
And it truly sounds like maybe when she got sick with pneumonia, she was out of school for a while. And when she came back to school, maybe she had lost some of what she learned already. But I
Mhm.
think that's unfortunate that she was essentially put out of school. They said she couldn't learn, so she couldn't go back to school. So who knows what she could have learned if that was not indeed the case at the time. Because we know now we have many students with disabilities that we're able to support in the class. And I mention RTIs because you did all of that intervention plans with your students. And so as we move forward, I just have a few more questions. Growing up in Georgia during the 1950s and 60s, what ideas or values were emphasized in your family or community? I know you said that you and during high school you guys marched to you wanted the gym floor to be paved, or what were you marching about? I believe that there wasn't a it wasn't an arrest, but something happened with the march.
Well, during that time, the African Americans, we didn't have a gym to play ball in, but play basketball. But it was a gym right there in
Mm,
our city. And so from that, we weren't allowed to play in it, but we had to always go to another town called Camilla, Georgia, and play in their gym. So some of the students in the community and others civil rights leaders got together and we marched in order to play ball right there in our own hometown and not going over crossing over into somebody else's hometown because the people in the other town didn't want us to be over there with them, so there was a conflict. So that's when they come together in our little town, Baker County, and march in order to go into the gym and the school be segregated. So from that, we did get in the gym, and then that way we had our own school gym to play in, and didn't have to go anywhere else.
That's amazing. When you consider your family, are there traditions or ways of doing things from your childhood that still influence you today?
Well,
I can tell you that there are. One of the things, when I got sick a couple of weeks ago, what did you do when you came over to my house?
I'm gonna say that my grandmother and my grandma and my mother, when we was growing up, they always like springtime coming. My grandmother would get some oil, castor oil, and she would give everybody the oil in the house. And that oil she was giving us, that was cleaning us out for the spring. So we'll get cleaned out every year for the spring. And then my mom, they would use something called turpentine. And if we had a fever, they would give us some. some aspirin, baby aspirin, and plus they said something like if we had worms, they would rub our tummy with turpentine. And my mom told me that if you have a fever, rub turpentine in the palm of your hands and
Yes.
up on the bottom of your feet and put some in a salsa and slide it up under the bed. Well, after I got grown and moved out and married on my own, I continued to follow that tradition with the turpentine. The oil I didn't do because I didn't like it myself. But the turpentine, I continue to use it from this day. If my daughter gets sick or my son gets sick, take that turpentine, I rub their tummies, I rub it in the palm of their hands and on their feet. And when I usually do it, my daughter always get up on the go and talk at 9 and going north.
So we only have about 10 more minutes. And so that is true about the turpentine. As children, you guys used to put it on our chest before we went to bed. And sometimes it would burn our little skin. What was the purpose of putting it on the children before bed? So they wouldn't get worms?
My mom would told me that it would run all the worms away if you had worms in your tummy and keep the fever away. And
Mm-hmm.
I just followed what she was doing.
So I remember at night before going to bed, you used to put the turpentine on us. So can you share stories or lessons that were passed down from your parents or grandparents that help shape your views on life, responsibility, or success? Do you have any stories that have been passed down across the generations?
But my mom always told us to be a leader and not a follower. She said that instead of you listening to what somebody else telling you to do, you listen for yourself and do the right thing for yourself. And she, from that, like I said, she was always telling us how to save money. She always told you to have a couple of dollars in your pocketbook. And she used to say, have a dime in your pocketbook because if you need to make a call, you can use that dime to make a call and you can get home. And so they always instill in us that you was the one, you was in charge of your own self, not nobody else. You may listen to what somebody say, but that don't mean that you have to do what they told you to do. Be your own self, be your own leader. And today I tell my children to be themselves. Don't let nobody else tell them what to do if it's not right. Tell them what to do, but it's not right. You use your own mind, you use your own judgment about whether it's right or wrong.
And I have heard you say that all the time about using your own mind. And because grandmama was very strong minded in the things that she did. I remember she always says nothing but one God. No matter, and my aunt Matt said that as well. No matter what kind of church you're going to, is nothing but one God. So, how do you think the time and place you were raised in influence your decisions and the things that you came to value? What type things do you value, and how do you think how you were raised influenced that?
Well, the thing that I value is that how they raised us, how they raised us to let us know that we can work and we can take care of ourselves. They always told my mom always told me not to depend on anybody else to take care of you. You can take care of yourself. She always told me don't sit down and look for a handout, but get up and go forward and do for yourself. And then that way you can have for yourself. So from that being said, I told my children again that to work for yourself. You don't need nobody else to take care of you. You don't need to look for your father to take care of you or somebody else because you can do it for your own self. So that's what I always look at that. Go for your own self. Use your own judgment and do whatever it is to be done for yourself. and not nobody else.
And I know this will be for a continuation in the conversation. I noticed in our conversation today, that was the first time you mentioned a father. You said you don't necessarily have to go look for him. You can do it. You can make it on your own. And so that's something. Although you did have a father that you knew, who that you very much looked like him and your siblings, but she instilled in you that, hey, your needs are met, you got this, and move forward. So we're going to question four. These are my final questions. So when you think about the big decisions in your life, what do you believe were the strongest influence on your choices? Whenever you have had to make a huge decision, what do you think influenced your decisions?
Well, the most biggest decision, one of it was getting married and moving away from my mom because I was the baby and I was the leader in the house of doing everything for her and my cousin, which was the older lady in her late 90s, and my cousin. I was the one that was there for them. And so I met my husband, which is my children's father, and I made a decision to marry and move away from them, not move in with her, but move away from her. And so that was a big decision. And the next big thing was I was all right because I was about 9 or 10 miles from her. But the next thing was that my husband didn't have a job anymore. And then he was hired for a job called Bryan and Williamson in Macon, Georgia. And so I had to move from this little bit of town away from my mom and my mother-in-law because and Aunt Mamie, we had a close relationship. So that was kind of hard on me to leave this little small town with one red light and leave my mom and mother-in-law and aunt to this big town called Macon, Georgia. But it was I had to do it, and it just was a big decision I had to do because I went with my husband.
Hmm. And so you did leave your supports at home. How did it turn out for you thus far?
After moving to Macon, and a couple years, I think with 2 years, I didn't do anything. I didn't work or nothing because I stayed home with my son because he was a baby, and my husband told me that I couldn't go to work because I couldn't leave him, and I didn't know anything about daycare. But as time went on, I began to know the town. I began to meet different peoples and all. And then my husband went to a funeral service. I was going to a church, but he went to another church and he met this one of the church called Union Baptist, and it was a great church. And after he told me about the church, my children and I, we started going to the church. He didn't go back anymore, but we started going back to the church. After going to the church, I became a member, and they became a member as well. And we began to do things in the church. I started singing in the choir, and my son Usher, my daughter was be in different activity, reading and doing different things. And so as we joined the church, I began to feel more comfortable and feeling like I was at home and meeting different peoples. And then after that, I began to work. And by working and getting out the house, that made a big, huge difference because you begin to know peoples and begin to get to know the town, the city.
Well, Mom, I certainly thank you for just agreeing to be a part of the interview tonight. I really wanted to interview you because I know, like today, someone said, "What are you and your mom doing?" I said, "Well, I'm working on my work today." And as I, over the last few weeks, as I have been reading and even rereading the chapters in adaptive leadership, when it came up to the loyalties assignment, I wanted to be sure to just make you a part of the work I read a quote from someone today. They were talking about their mother and the legacy of mothers and grandmothers. They are all with us every day as we go to work, as we make decisions, whether it be to buy a car. Just our perspective on life goes with us in everything we do. Our ancestors are always with us, and so I'm so thankful for you coming on just to share with me in these moments. I'm hoping that we get together again because there are some other things that I want us to kind of focus on talking about. I know just for the sake of this conversation, we didn't talk about just some of the spiritual aspects, the spiritual stories that are told in South Georgia, and all of the warnings and things that your grandmothers tell us to look out for that still to this very day we are just aware of and we look out for those things. And so I just want to ask you as we close, how do you feel about your interview?
Well, the interview was went well, and it just was for you to remember so many things I have told you down through the years. Because some of the things that I told you, I went there thought that you would remember it. Because a lot of things, I'm saying, oh, okay, she remember that, but you always was the one that could tell us something. Even when your daddy, you was a little girl, and I would try to spare words to your daddy, and he didn't understand, and you would always say, "Daddy, listen to mom what she is saying." So it was just a surprise that you can remember so much what grandmama told me and grandmama told you, and you always had a listening ear.
I sure do.
Always listen, and then you would repeat the things that grandma you would say. Grandmama said this and that. So you always were the one that listen, do, and ask question. You always ask question, what if? So I really enjoyed the interview, and I really appreciate that you thought enough of your mom and thought that your mom was the one that could do an interview with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mom. And just as we close, I just think of just all the female leaders that surrounded you as a child growing up. Definitely strong in what they call matriarchy in the female leaders. Your mom, your aunts, you mentioned your mother-in-law, your aunt-in-law. And so I'm thankful. And you too are a part of the lineage of strong African American women. You are certainly making a difference in my life and making a difference in the lives of your godchildren, my sister Kendra, and just everyone that you meet. So I thank you so very much for this hour, and I just wish you well. Love you, Mama.
Love you too.